everyone, this is Paul Gale from paulgalenetwork.com, and thank you for joining me today for video game news and video game talk. It is September 22nd, 2021, and today's main news story and topic of discussion is the upcoming Nintendo Direct. This morning, just a few moments ago, Nintendo had the following to say on Twitter. Tune in 9/23 at 3 p.m. Pacific Time for a Nintendo Direct live stream featuring roughly 40 minutes of information focused mainly on Nintendo Switch games launching this winter. That's fantastic. I can't wait, Traditionally, more often than not, a Nintendo Direct or a Direct Mini, some type of Direct, right, comes in the month of September. From 2012 to 2020, more often than not, we get something from Nintendo. And even on the years where there is no Direct on a September, it's not too far away. It comes in October or November, right? But everything looked like it was leading to, yes, a Nintendo Direct is happening this month. Because there were a few games that were shown off recently that have been announced for other platforms, like from THQ Nordic or from Alan Wake, for instance, but that were not announced to have Nintendo Switch versions. They seem like likely candidates, so why not? Then we have a couple of ratings boards from other countries outside of the United States saying that, okay, Alan Wake is listed on Nintendo Switch and then gets kind of removed. Sometimes these are accidents. Sometimes these are accidents in the sense of, whoops, put it out too early, Rarely, though, it does occur that, it was just never meant to even be listed. It was just a mistake in that regards, But then we also have that FCC filing from Nintendo regarding the upcoming controller of some sort for Nintendo Switch. Originally, that filing was going to be made public March 2022, but it got recently bumped up to this Friday. So what could it possibly be? What would we see on the 24th? The government's not going to be the ones that show off Nintendo's new controller. Nintendo's going to do it. So as the month was going on, I was kind of wavering, looking at all of the past Directs in September and really that June through December timeframe, I still felt that we would have one, but I wouldn't be surprised or too disappointed if it ended up slipping to October. But I was still holding out for September. As of yesterday, though, I really had a feeling that, okay, this morning we are either going to wake up to a Nintendo Direct Mini just boom, dropped, or this very announcement that the next day we're going to have a Nintendo Direct. And I am just stoked. It's a 40-minute presentation, roughly, so that's pretty sizey. And it's going to focus mainly on Nintendo Switch games launching this winter. Keep in mind, winter takes place from late December through March. And that's a pretty good time span, which means early 2022 titles like Pokemon Legends Arceus will very likely be here, even if Diamond and Pearl remakes technically are before winter. They will probably be here as well, as fall usually gets lumped in to the winter time frame. They kind of get mixed in with one another. There could be a last little glimpse of Metroid Dread, a little highlight of Nintendo Switch OLED model. Probably some details on Advance Wars, since we have not seen anything new on it from when it was first announced at E3. Depending on when Mario plus Rabbids Sparks of Hope comes out next year, that could show up. We did get it at E3, but we don't know when in 2022. I do think that Nintendo will have some surprises in store for us that carry out later in 2022 that show up in tomorrow's Direct. But most of it, to be safe, is going to be the rest of the stuff coming out this fall and first 3 months of next year. I think it's likely to see a little snippet of Big Brain Academy. Maybe that one will be here as part of some type of sizzle reel. I also think that, Nickelodeon's new All-Star Brawl title will show up, a new SpongeBob game, Alan Wake, likely to all be present here. And then comes the speculation, the wishful thinking. What else? Will The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 be here? To be safe, I'm going to say no, just because I think that game is going to come out later in 2022, like even a fall title kind of later, like a November kind of release. Maybe. That's just my thought, especially when they said at E3, Mr. E.G. Aonuma, that is, that they are targeting 2022. Otherwise, they could have said 2022 more confidently, or first half. But the fact that they said kind of targeting it makes me think, it could slip to 2023. But I'm still holding out hope that, all right, it's going to be like that major November release. So they could show off a new trailer for it. After all, at this point, the game is 14 months out. That's not too much longer to wait. Maybe they do small trailer here, another trailer, come February or something, and then at June is the big reveal of, okay, here's the release date and everything. The game's coming in 5 months. Get major hyped. But to be safe, I'm going to say perhaps no Breath of the Wild 2 this time around. The rumored games like Xenoblade Chronicles 3, I could see that being a show opener, maybe a second to last closer, maybe even the one more thing kind of closer. It looks like Monolith Soft has been developing something for quite a while. We've heard different rumors from various people that Xenoblade Chronicles 3 is in development. It is ambitious. It is 18 fully involved. Graphically, it's going to be pushing Nintendo Switch to new limits of what the hardware can do, and from different voice actors, actresses that, I don't know if I could talk about this or that, but okay, giving us a little bit of a clue that something is coming. I think Xenoblade Chronicles 3 does get shown off tomorrow. I also think that we get some Splatoon 3 tomorrow, because Splatoon 1 and 2, they fit kind of a summer vibe, but even if they would come out in June, I think that could be that one or two games that gets shown off tomorrow that technically falls outside of winter, outside of December through March timeframe, but maybe has a June release and is here for the direct. Maybe not, but Splatoon 3 I think seems likely. Then again, Splatoon 3 might even be like a March, April, May kind of game, and then it's really just barely slipping out of December and it's a spring release, but close enough that it makes sense to have tomorrow, The unexpected, though, I guess this is where it gets really fun, and this is what we all live for, There's the unexpected games that are likely, wishful thinking, kind of unlikely, and honestly, we want to keep expectations grounded, but you can't not get hyped up, right? This is like Christmas for us. This is your all birthday. If you're a big Nintendo fan, you live for this moment, right? You see this beautiful red and white, and you just know what this means. It gives you a good feeling. Coming from an era where we had to wait every month for our Electronic Gaming Monthly or Nintendo Power to come in the mail, or you go to the store and pick up a Game Pro or a Game Fan or something, and that was your news. These days you get announcements every day of some sort from Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, from Nintendo, Sony, Microsoft, all sorts of third-party companies. There's so much all the time that you're getting. But these special Nintendo Directs that you get a few times a year, and from other companies having their own designated showcases, they're really something special. So you can't have a bad Nintendo Direct. It's news being presented to you in video form for free that you get to check out online, make you happy, have your reactions, and have something to look forward to for the next few months or for the next couple of years out. So I'm hyped. We have rumors of a Donkey Kong Country game in development. Could that be shown? We have rumors of a Kirby game. We in fact know that a Kirby game is in development because it has been said that an ambitious Kirby title is indeed in the works. It could be shown. There's been this back and forth with Pikmin 4 for a very long time. Pikmin 3 Deluxe obviously did very well on Nintendo Switch. Is now the time to release a Pikmin 4? I don't know. But these are some of the titles that could show up. Now, any one of those that I listed, Xenoblade Chronicles 3, Donkey Kong, Pikmin 4, a new Kirby, would any one of those be possible to include in this holiday's lineup? That's a tricky one. Nintendo would get Metroid Dread out of the way, have it release, focus on that post-launch, get ready for the holidays, and then separate the divide really between this is for Shin Megami Tensei 5, this is for Pokemon Diamond and Pearl, and have a third pillar, another big game. I think a Donkey Kong or a Kirby or a Xenoblade Chronicles 3 could fit in this holiday season, because between September and December, that is 3 months. You could find a way how to make it fit and fulfill a different audience's desire. I just don't know how likely that is. Would any one of those three be better suited for, a first quarter of 2022? Maybe. We know Arceus is leading up with January, so we could be looking at a January Pokemon Legends Arceus, February a brand new Kirby game, March a Splatoon 3, and that one more coming later in 2022, Xenoblade Chronicles 3. That could be the way it works out tomorrow. We heard Platinum Games talking about Star Fox Zero and how it's unfortunate that some games get lost on a previous system and that they would be happy to bring it out on Nintendo Switch. Now, it would be kind of weird to have heard that and then see a trailer, because then it's like, now you already were working on it, very likely, and you knew about it, just said it that way to maybe build up some hype without giving anything away necessarily. I wouldn't mind seeing Star Fox Zero on Nintendo Switch. Obviously, I would really like to see a new Star Fox game, but Nintendo is pretty smart with bringing over Wii U software, because the Wii U was a good system that had a lot of really good games made for it by Nintendo, but unfortunately it just never reached as many people as it could have or arguably should have. Nintendo games are always well received for their respective ownership of each system. There's a pretty good ratio of GameCube owners to people who buy GameCube games, Wii owners to who buy Wii games. Sometimes you have something like, despite Wii coming out and busting out 101 million people, you still have a game like The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword sell under 4 million. But then it's also at the end of a cycle of a system, interest starting to wane. You got motion control with Wii Motion Plus kind of being put in there. So there are a couple of times where it works against it. But Nintendo Switch specifically, the Switch effect is real. I think any of Wii U's games, I should say, that you bring over to Nintendo Switch, it's going to fare better on this system. Any franchise, really, that you are bringing over to Nintendo Switch from Nintendo's hard staple is going to do really well on this system. So there's room to bring over some existing Wii U ports and let that money that you spent in development back several years ago be more realized now, because Nintendo was struggling for a bit there. They had a successful platform in the 3DS that was carrying some weight, but Wii U was kind of hurting them. So you have some really good quality games that never got to see as much sales potential be realized. Yoshi's Woolly World, for instance, that's one that should definitely come to Nintendo Switch. Yes, we have Crafted World, but Woolly World should come over. You could make the argument that Xenoblade Chronicles X is another one. Pretty big development, pretty good budget for that game. It should also come over. And I think Star Fox Zero is another one. I don't think you just let these games chill and never realize that, they could be a couple million seller, And you could say the same thing with some Wii titles that maybe Nintendo would want to, all right, let's polish up Punch-Out! Wii and put it on Nintendo Switch. 16 by 9, 1080p, 60 frames per second, add a couple of new modes, online fights, couple of new characters, and there you go, release that. Now's the time, and if you watch this channel for a while, you know I think legacy content, now's the time to shine on Nintendo Switch. Bring back the franchises. Have creative solutions to the franchises that are kind of lapsed and you don't know what to do with. Like F-Zero, you could completely create a brand new F-Zero game. It's going to satisfy that high-speed racing market that really wants F-Zero. It's a popular, long-standing franchise that just has been dormant for quite a while. You could make it a little bit bigger by having it be an action game where you're taking control of Captain Falcon 2 and fighting off bad guys and story missions that go into the racing sequences, racing online. You could do F-Zero the traditional way. It won't compete with Mario Kart directly, it'll be fine. But like I said before, with 1080p snowboarding, mixing with Wave Race, mixing with Excite Bike, you put a game that's 3 racers in one. You go to an island, go to the resort, you snowboard down the mountain, you go off into the ocean and ride your jet ski around to then hop off onto your motocross bike and work your way through. And like, that's a cool game. You could even throw in Pilot Wings and you're, skydiving or doing some kind of terrain parasailing, shifting around the island, going through rings and stuff like that. You could incorporate those 3 or 4 games into one game. Nintendo Extreme Sports, bam. Nintendo Extreme Racing, boom. That could work. But even if you're not going to go that big, you look at Fire Emblem, 3 Houses, best-selling game in the Fire Emblem franchise. Maybe we see another Fire Emblem come back. Luigi's Mansion 3, I don't think we get a Luigi's Mansion 4 just yet, but that's the best-selling in this franchise. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, also the best. Do you necessarily go in the past and take something like Ice Climbers and make a brand new Ice Climbers game? Maybe not necessarily, but in Ice Climbers 99, that's how you could keep that old franchise relevant and kind of do something with it modern. So you are showing more people that, wow, Nintendo has a lot of rich IP. Eternal Darkness, that's dormant, right? Nintendo owns that. And I think we should get a new Eternal Darkness game. I think that could satisfy a mature, story-based driven, awesome thrill ride of a game that would only be available to be played on the Nintendo platform, a family. Whether it's Switch, Switch Lite, Switch OLED model, the foreseeable future, Switch Plus, Nintendo Switch 2, etc. That would be a good game to bring it back, and maybe you would have once every 3 or 4 years, we've got this new franchise that's old, but hasn't been touched in 20 years, that's now something that's like a Zelda or a Mario that comes out once every so often, right? Kid Icarus, though, a new game featuring Pit. At the very least, port over Uprising from 3DS. Bring that onto Nintendo Switch. Work the controls around. Release the game for $40. Up-res it. Or maybe you release it for $60 because you really do value your IP. Nintendo does. And you bring that game back. And if it fares well, you continue with Kid Icarus in new games every few years. People think of Nintendo, they instantly think, oh, Mario, Zelda, Pokemon, and Animal Crossing, yeah, Mario Kart and Smash Brothers. But the greater fan is the person that really knows, oh yeah, Fire Emblem, Xenoblade Chronicles, the spin-off Luigi's Mansion. More people know about Splatoon, the more hardcore know about ARMS, and you got to dive deeper and deeper into Nintendo's wonderful storied past to get into a lot of the older titles that have just been gone for too long. I wouldn't mind seeing a new Golden Sun. I wouldn't mind seeing a new Punch-Out like I mentioned earlier. So I just hope that Nintendo acknowledges its past and recognizes that they have the opportunity here to make all of these franchises be household names. That when you think Nintendo, you're now also thinking, oh yeah, that's where I play Fire Emblem, that's where I play Metroid, that's where I play Donkey Kong. A lot of people know but not as many as the folks that know Mario, Zelda, Mario Kart. You can make these smaller franchises bigger. There's enough room. I'm just excited, Like I said, that's why this is, I should say, both a video game news day because I'm presenting you this news, but also a video game talk day because I'm really diving deep into what I think the Direct is going to be, should be, some of my hopes behind it, and kind of a general approach of what I want Nintendo to do. I don't think you should waste those Wii U titles. I think The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword and The Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess should eventually be ported to Nintendo Switch, and I think they will, but Nintendo's also not in a position where they need to cram things together. They could stretch out the Nintendo Switch lifespan. They have such a healthy ecosystem going on that they could release their games, every 6 months, every year, and you're looking at 2027. Nintendo Switch has been out for 10 years. Yeah, Nintendo Switch 2 just came out, but 2 years into the Nintendo Switch 2 lifespan, assuming it is 2025, for instance, you're still getting games that come out on the OG Nintendo Switch, and that's when you finally get, Twilight Princess HD. I don't think Nintendo's going to take that long, but they're in a position where they can spread things out. They could focus and have deep, long, many-year-long development cycles on multiple games while sprinkling stuff from their past. Speaking of the past, that controller thing that we were talking about from the FCC, it looks like it's just timing up just wonderfully to be Nintendo 64 controller for Nintendo Switch Online. And Nintendo 64 holds a very special place to me. Nintendo Switch, I feel like, is probably going to end up becoming my favorite Nintendo platform ever. Maybe the best one, too. But Nintendo 64, to this day, remains my personal favorite. I have such a connection with when the system came out, what it did for the industry. I appreciate the analog stick, the rumble pack, the 6-button layout, while having triggers, the cool look of the system being sleek, the expansion pack adding more power. I was a 13-year-old kid when Nintendo 64 came out. This was a big time in my life. Experiencing for, several years, going from 1987 to 1996, almost a decade of playing games on a 2D plane, and even, playing some PlayStation prior to N64, but still not really fully having that complete 3D experience, and then playing Super Mario 64 on the Japanese N64 just a week or two after it came out in Japan at the import shop, where I went and got to play it at Gameland, and then just being blown away. And then just playing Nintendo 64 when I got it, the US model, after September 29th's launch, Mario 64 and Pilot Wings and Wave Race, and one of the best games of all time, The Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time's on that game. 4-player multiplayer modes with GoldenEye 007 and Mario Kart, the first Smash Brothers game, WWF No Mercy and WrestleMania 2000, great wrestling games, and Beetle Adventure Racing and Diddy Kong's Racing, Perfect Dark, lots of gems came out on that time. So with me, with where I was in my life, as a kid, being impressionable, as a teenager into a late teenager, going from 2D games in their not quite infancy, but their growth and explosion phase from NES to SNES to then N64 was just such a giant leap. That controller, everything about it, it's hard to pick another system that's my favorite over it. But Nintendo Switch, honestly, it's got that magical feeling again, It's this TV game device that you completely take out modern TV gaming experiences that's on a parity level with other platforms on the market that you could also take on the go and not see this difference of quality of, okay, there's a difference in playing Super Nintendo, Sega Genesis, and then playing the handheld going Game Boy, Game Gear, Okay, there's a difference in playing, more modern game systems like PlayStation 3, Xbox 360, Wii, and then, okay, playing, PSP, DS, 3DS, PS Vita even, as we went a little bit farther. But playing Nintendo Switch, yeah, you could see differences in Doom on Nintendo Switch than you did on Xbox One or PlayStation 4. But at this point, a lot of the games, like Dragon Ball Fighter Z, I've got no problems with being any different, because I really can't tell a difference at this point in some of these titles, and I'm able to take it on the go, and I could turn the system into its own TV with the kickstand and play like this, and it's instantly got two people right away able to play any game. So I'm telling you, like, you're watching this and you're like, what's this Nintendo Switch thing about? You obviously know what I'm talking about, but that's from a hardware standpoint, why I am such a big fan of the system. And of course, it's doing a really good job with unique individual games. It's bringing third parties back more strong than ever before, well, at least in many years, to Nintendo. They're nailing it on a first party perspective. They're doing a really good job with indies. They're doing a great job when it comes to presenting and keeping that flow alive, with these directs throughout the year. So yeah, now's a good time to be a Nintendo fan. You got to stick with the company through richer or poor, through thick and thin. Nintendo's had some hard years, but if you're a fan, at the end of the day, there's always something to look forward to. Even in the times where they're struggling or there's droughts, there's still good stuff on Nintendo. And I think that if tomorrow they announce Nintendo 64 is now being added to Nintendo Switch Online, through the rest of this year, or through March of 2022, there will be no extra charge for Nintendo 64 games being added to your existing Nintendo Switch Online service. But after a certain date, you will have your normal plan of $20 a year, and if you wish to be, the Nintendo Switch Online Plus plan, that's also going to give you access to N64, Game Boy, Game Boy Color, Game Boy Advance games for an extra $5 a month if you're not, or an extra $5 a year if you're a regular $20 a year subscriber. And if you're one of the $35 a year subscribers, which I am, because I have 7 friends join me on the family plan, it goes from 35 to 45, something like that. That would be kind of fair. Nintendo, after all, did give people quite a bit of free time on Nintendo Switch to play online before they started to charge $20 a year. And to be fair, that $20 goes a long way, because you got hundreds of NES and SNES games. You got the ability to save 95% of your library or more on cloud, which is very convenient. Some little bonus perks, downloading some things at a little bit of a discount, controller access, that kind of thing. And yeah, for $20, the access to all those games, to play online, and to have that cloud save data backup, I think is worth it. $25 a year to add N64 would be great, or going from 35 to 45 if you're on the family plan. That's just my idea. Give people it free for a while, and then say after this date it's going to be this much cost. Maybe it's even free for a whole year, with no impact on cost, but that might be a little bit wishful thinking. Hard to say. But if we got a Nintendo 64 controller, because N64 is coming out with its 25th anniversary this September 29th in the United States, and for that anniversary, it's okay, Nintendo 64 games drop it online. The controller is made available now. Nintendo Switch Online members could have early access to subscribing it, but it will be made available also at your local retailers and online shops and stuff. Maybe that's also next week. Maybe it's a little bit later. That would be fantastic. Do they have multiple colored controllers? Do they build the Rumble Pack into the controller? Do they keep it pure to what it was before? Or do they somehow modernize the N64 controller by moving the prongs a little bit differently so that you have equal access between these two, and then you go ahead and just throw in one more shoulder button and another analog stick, and now it works with all of your other Nintendo Switch games? Wouldn't that be crazy? That's probably not likely, but if Nintendo did, modify the controller so that, all right, it's a two-pronged device. You've got access to the D-pad and the analog stick on this side. You can switch between, which one you want. You have that Z trigger underneath. You have that L button on top, so maybe you're playing it like this. For most games, probably this will suffice, but if you want to, you have this type of access. And on the right side of the controller, you have your R button, and you just throw in Z2 down here, or call it ZR now. You have your face buttons, and you have your second analog stick. It goes like that, if you get what I'm saying. That's kind of a weird controller. It's kind of funky. I'm sure Nintendo can make it work. They probably don't have a need to. Honestly, if you're going to modernize a controller, I think you can modernize the GameCube controller more easily, and have a marriage of the GameCube controller and the current Pro controller, and have a couple of different SKUs. I mentioned that on the channel before too. Have one where it's, okay, you got a light tap L and R, and ZL and ZR are actually the curved, nice, depressible buttons that the GameCube controller did have. And you have just one model where it's got the 4 face buttons in the diamond layout, one model with the 4 face buttons of that classic GameCube layout. 2 analog sticks, you make the C1 a little bit bigger, and you keep in the HD rumble and the motion and NFC support, and there you go. That's your new Pro Controller. Pro Controller 2, Model 1 and Model 2. I think that's beautiful. Making the N64 modern like that with another analog stick and stuff, yeah, you get into complex territory. Probably not going to be that. But we got to talk about the games. Do you put in Super Mario 64, even though Super Mario 64 was a part of its, Super Mario 3D All-Stars collection? Maybe. Maybe now's a time that Nintendo goes back with these N64 games and presents them in a different manner. NES and SNES games, they hold a certain charm to them because they represent such a different art style from early 8-bit era to a more sophisticated pixel art 16-bit era, and they hold their own. The same goes with other 16-bit consoles of the time. But a lot of the early PlayStation, Sega Saturn, Nintendo 64 games, you're dealing with some low polygon textures, some 2D textures in 3D planes, some low poly environments and stuff like that. And it's a little bit jarring for some folks. It's kind of the reason why, people have an easier time watching old 2D Disney animated movies than early 3D Disney animated movies, because the 3D animated movies, they don't really hold up as well to today's modern 2021 polygon heavy films, right? Whereas the 2D ones, they kind of mastered the craft, and despite coming out earlier, they're not aged worse. Different art styles last a little bit longer. With N64 games, would Nintendo polish them up a bit? I'm not talking about like remaking these classic N64 games one at a time, although there was a time where Nintendo was considering a reimagined series of Nintendo 64 games for Wii U, and that was scrapped somewhere in the development because Wii U was seeing that it's not going to be a successful system. So Super Mario 64 reimagined, and Wave Race, and 1080p, and a couple of other these titles. There were several of them that were in development at some point, at least from a thought standpoint. I don't know how far Nintendo went along with the development of it, but it never happened. That was actually a story that I covered on not on Video Game News, just on PaulGaleNetwork.com before I was doing this Video Game News with PGN segment on YouTube. But that's pretty cool. I don't think that Nintendo's going to go that route, though. They didn't even go that route with the 3D All-Stars package. We got very similar looking versions of Mario, 64, Sunshine, and Galaxy. A couple of them got the benefit of being widescreen, higher frame rate and stuff, but even look at Mario 64, it was 720p, it wasn't 1080p. So don't expect these games, like if they put on Star Fox 64, Pilot Wings, Wave Race, Beetle Adventure Racing, Excitebike 64, don't expect them to be, prettied up with the remake treatment like Crash Bandicoot Trilogy received. But I think, at the very least, some crispening up of the textures, a little bit of a bump in the resolution, maybe even in the same format, that 4:3 format, seems likely. Although anything more than a straight port that requires some touching up is more reason to believe that it's going to be a premium service. Unless they go a completely different route and you actually can buy the games. That would be a different direction to take. Okay, if you're a Nintendo Switch Online member, you have some access to playing, but you also have a cheaper access to buying. They are available in the eShop. They are available on Nintendo Switch Online, but if you are an NSO member, you could buy them off the eShop for cheaper, and then they are a part of your collection, period. Hard to say exactly what route they would take. I honestly wouldn't mind being able to buy and fully own all of these games. Well, not every single one in the library that exists on NES, SNES, and N64, but a fair amount of them I wouldn't mind buying and owning them forever on my Nintendo Switch. And that's actually something that I hope that Nintendo does better going forward, is keeping that legacy, working on new platforms. They did it on Wii, where you could very easily transfer all the Pikmin, carry the files onto Wii U. That was cool. But once I had them all on Wii U, I couldn't bring them onto Nintendo Switch, and I kind of wish I could. Now I want them on Switch, and I hope that I'll eventually be able to bring them on Nintendo Switch too. If not, at least let the Nintendo Switch work in the Switch 2's dock. Even if that doesn't happen though, I guess it is always easier to pick up and play if you're running out of HDMI ports or whatever. Pick up and play your whole library on this one handheld device, even if it's not future legacy proof where it's always going on to the next system. So I think Nintendo Switch is a really good position, really good system to, like, let's be able to own everything on one, right? But ideally, be able to future transfer too. I'm just excited. I really hope that we get some awesome surprises. One game that I thought up of, which would be really cool, is, my Metroid 2D collection. And that would be ideally like 5 months after Metroid Dread has received good sales, release a compilation 4-in-1 or a 6-in-1 2D Metroid cartridge where it's, Zero Mission from Game Boy Advance, Samus Returns from 3DS, Super Metroid from SNES, and Metroid Fusion from Game Boy Advance. And you could also throw in the original Metroid 1, Metroid 2 from NES and Game Boy respectively. Give them a little bit of a graphical tightening up, make them clean, make them crisp, make them work, possibly throw in a 16:9 mode for these games, throw in some kind of art gallery and a little bit of a conversation piece on how the games got to be made, like a little documentary sort of thing in the cartridge or the download. Release that 6 months from now, after Dread comes out. 5-6 months after that, do Metroid Prime Trilogy HD. Then another 5 months after that, have your Metroid Prime 4. And then from there, I think you no longer have this giant wait time of multiple years between Metroid releases. I think you would then see, like, all right, every 3 or 4 years, we're going to get a 2D Metroid or a 3D Metroid, because Metroid's back to being healthy again. We want healthy Nintendo franchises. Mario and Zelda, Splatoon, Animal Crossing, Smash Brothers, healthy. Mario Kart, healthy. Despite not getting Mario Kart. Mario Kart's almost too healthy, right? We had Mario Kart 8 launch on Wii U, and between the Mario Kart 8 Wii U SKU and Nintendo Switch SKU, it's the best-selling Mario Kart game of all time. If not now, very soon, probably by the time Nintendo announces its next quarter financial results and gives those to us like late October or early November, through September 30th, they're going to say that now officially Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, the single SKU of the Nintendo Switch version itself, is the best-selling game in the entire Mario Kart franchise. But what about Mario Kart 9? Oh, could you imagine? That would be a probably unrealistic but best case scenario of somehow this was hidden, this was secret, it didn't get leaked out. Nintendo announced Mario Kart 9 coming this fall. total internet explosion. This beautiful trailer, a follow-up trailer with extra footage, teaser of the tracks, that graphical level of boost between what 8 had on Wii U. That was a Wii U game, and yeah, it got tightened up for Nintendo Switch, but here's a ground-up Mario Kart 9 built for Wii U. Oh my gosh, and somehow it's coming out this holiday? Dude, that would be the craziest game to be announced and released within 3 months. Hands down. I don't think that's going to happen, though, but man, that would be cool. that was a fun one. I felt into that for sure. Tomorrow is going to be exciting. I am hyped as hyped can be, but I'm also one of those people that I know not everything I'm saying is going to happen. Probably not even remotely close to what I'm saying is going to happen. But there's so much that could, that even if a fraction of it happens and a couple of other little things, that's still going to be cool for me. Nintendo could show off Bayonetta 3 for the first time tomorrow. The game was dropped in December of 2017 at the Game Awards when Nintendo Switch was only 9 months old, and we were really feeling like, wow, this system's going to be something special. This system's got a lot of awesome momentum, a lot of energy behind it. It's doing well. Bayonetta 3. Teaser trailer, half a minute long, CG footage, Bayonetta falling to the ground. What the heck? What's going to happen next? It's not like we were expecting it to show up at every E3 or every Nintendo Direct or every Game Awards, but like, man, nothing, not any of them. So now it's been almost 4 years since we saw anything. That would be a mind-blowing reveal for me personally, and it said, coming 2022, finally. Halloween 2022. That would be cool. Of course, as hyped as I am about everything mentioned, I would love to see Breath of the Wild 2 if it's going to have a release month or release date. Even if not, I wouldn't mind being blown away and treated to something. And if it still says 2022 or fall 2022, I'm still okay with that, even if it's not a date or a month. Just give me some new footage. I would love to see that. I'd love to see Mario Kart 9. But I think if I could pick one game that I want to see most is Metroid Prime 4. Dang. Because Metroid Prime 4 is another one that, like, oof, that one hits close to home. I've been a long time Metroid fan. I love Samus Aran as a character. I love the Metroid games. I think as a gaming franchise, it's one of the most consistently well done franchises in gaming, yet has such a small amount of sales to represent it. A strong fan base of hardcore gamers that love it, critically acclaimed by reviewers, journalists, so forth, but just not the sales that represent how good that series is. I want Metroid Dread to do well, and then I want Metroid Prime 4 to keep taking that series forward, and then to just be this beautiful, fully realized space exploration, deep game with awesome gameplay mechanics. That would be my pick of a title to launch alongside Nintendo Switch Plus, or that it really gets the boost on Nintendo Switch 2 to really let Retro Studios take their art, their ambition, their ideas to go forward and deliver us this knockout game. I mean, what Super Mario Galaxy was for Mario, kind of taking it to new heights. What The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild 2 was to Zelda. Metroid Prime 4, bring that to Metroid. Mario games have always done well, but by Mario Odyssey, I mean, like, it really did a lot different with Mario's formula and happened to sell well. But Zelda literally did something different with the formula and sold better than ever. Metroid, I want it to, do something different with the formula and also sell better. So that's why I used Galaxy and Breath of the Wild as my examples. But I want Metroid Prime 4 to be just this spectacular game. And I just don't know what to think about it too much yet, because we knew that it was in development probably somewhere around March of 2017 to like October 2018 is when it had its development time, right? Something like a year and 7 months, year and a half worth of development time. Probably it stopped around then, and it was realized like, oof, this is not going well, not where we want it to be, not that level of quality. Retro Studios, it's yours around November of 2018. And then in January of 2019, Nintendo drops, boom, we're sorry to let you know this, but we feel like we should. Development has recently switched gears, and now it's in Retro Studios' hands. So the game's going to take a little bit longer. We apologize, but things are in a good position now, and we'll keep you posted. Worst case scenario, I think Retro Studios completely started from ground zero, from scratch, in November of 2018, and right now they are at the almost 3 years of development. Right now they have something substantial. 2 years, 10 months of development from a studio that already has Metroid assets, has already worked on 3 Metroid Prime games for GameCube and Wii U, or GameCube and Wii, I should say, has had Nintendo Switch hardware at their disposal, development kits at their disposal for a long time, despite not cranking out game after game. They're there. They are a part of Nintendo. They are Nintendo, just, named Retro Studios. Fully acquired studio, fully a part of Nintendo. And they're a team that right now has something that they could show. If this shows up tomorrow, that might be my biggest wow moment, that while I'm live recording, while I'm live streaming, that's going to be my most excited. I'm just feeling, I'm trying to will it into existence, Metroid Prime 4, Best case scenario, that year and a half of development time from the other studio, which we think was, Bandai Namco related, some of it was salvageable. Maybe not the engine, maybe not the control mechanics, but some of the art design of the ship, of some of the enemies, of a boss battle, some sound effects, some voice acting, some recorded lines, some musical composition that was recorded, a couple of story ideas, some lore that was typed out of what's going on. Like, hopefully not a year and a half is just trashed and Retro Studios is completely starting from ground zero. I like to think, I like to hope, and I think I do think that some of it was able to be applied. Part of that is wishful thinking, but part of it is a legit, I think some of it was accepted, because it couldn't have been horrible. Maybe not Nintendo's vision, maybe not that, no, we need this game to be like up here, and it's only here, but we need it to be like there, Retro's the one to take it like all the way, right? So that would mean that the game is kind of even further in development, right? Like close to 3 years in actual development, but a little bit more than 3 years worth of substance in it. We'll see. Tomorrow is the day. What are we going to see from third parties? Will we see a new update on Ninja Turtles? Shredder's Revenge? Could we see Silk Song finally show up here for the first time in a long time? Wouldn't it be wild if it was maybe not an exclusive, because that's probably a little bit crazy, but a timed exclusive on Nintendo Switch would be big, because Hollow Knight's got a pretty good following. And finally, I think the last thing I'm going to end today is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate Final Prediction. Who are they going to close out with? That could be how they open. I know I mentioned maybe Xenoblade Chronicles 3 would be a good choice for an opener, closer, or that last one more thing. But to be safe, maybe a Super Smash Bros. Opener, final character announced now, coming next month. I don't know if I have a final pick, like who's my most wanted. Part of me thinks, gosh, if Impa is a part of Breath of the Wild 2, have that Impa be the character in this Super Smash Bros. Ultimate final character slot. Have some skins of her from past designs, from like Ocarina of Time, Skyward Sword, and stuff like that. Because she's a character that has been around a long time, like Link, like Zelda, like Ganondorf, who has a lot of moves, and who could potentially play an integral role in Breath of the Wild 2 that you'd be getting people excited for now. If it's a Nintendo first-party character, Impa is my pick. If it's not, Master Chief, Halo would be huge. Crash Bandicoot would be very satisfying. And the probably not going to happen, but would also be big, Sora from Kingdom Hearts, Kratos from God of War, Ratchet and Clank. You know, like I said, those are probably not going to happen, especially, you know, the latter two. Scorpion, I think Scorpion from Mortal Kombat, or Doom Guy from Doomslayer, I think their time has come and gone. I would have loved for them to be in it, but at this point, I don't think it would be big enough. Like, if you were saving, unless if the last character is not going to be the biggest, because personally, I think the biggest, most hyped reaction for me of all of them was Banjo-Kazooie's inclusion. So, unless if you're topping Banjo-Kazooie, you know, Terry Bogard was awesome, and, you know, having Minecraft representation was cool, and having Kazuya was awesome reveal too. Like, the trailer itself was neat. He's cool, but like, of what it meant to have Banjo-Kazooie in it, that's probably the biggest as far as DLC goes. Joker, cool. You know, obviously a little bit earlier on, having Castlevania inclusion, Simon and Richter Belmont, very cool. But yeah, Banjo-Kazooie was it. So maybe you're not going to end on this high, crazy note of this major third-party collaboration. But if you were going to, is Scorpion or Doom Guy high enough on there? I don't know. Had Scorpion been released earlier, would have made a little bit more sense. Or Doomslayer earlier, maybe. But I think ending on Crash, Impa, or Master Chief, those are my final three. Like, yeah, that would be cool. All right. I guess that's going to do it for today. I'll probably stop recording and then think, oh my gosh, how did I not mention this franchise that whole time? They're totally going to do that tomorrow. Or like, but that's it today. Oh, see, it almost did happen. Third party wise, I'm hoping for something big and specific. I have a feeling that of the two Koei Tecmo games that are supposedly in development, in which they are taking control over two separate Nintendo franchises and releasing games for them in the near future, if we get to see one of those two, that would be cool. Some type of collaboration between Nintendo and another studio, or another studio making a game exclusively for Big N. Grand Theft Auto trilogy being ported over, Metal Gear Solid being ported over. Now's the time for MGS. It's still not on Nintendo Switch, which is pretty weird. The Castlevania GBA collection being ported over, that one I think is fairly likely. But the final one, the one that made me think, oh yeah, that Resident Evil rumor. Resident Evil's hot right now. If this Resident Evil game is made exclusively for Nintendo Switch using that RE engine, and we saw the level of visual quality, that fidelity in Monster Hunter Rise looking really crisp, take that RE engine approach, but shrink the world down because you don't need to make an RE game open world territory. You're going to have a better looking visual style because it's a smaller game. And if you have that drop tomorrow as exclusively coming to Nintendo Switch, this Resident Evil title, that would be pretty big too. Of course, the random stuff that I'm always like hoping for, you know, give me more Street Fighter. I'd love to see some Super Street Fighter 4, Ultra Street Fighter 4, the Final Challengers HD version Part 2 come out, or like wishful thinking, a Nintendo versus Capcom game where it's a Capcom fighting game that plays like Marvel vs. Capcom, but with all of Nintendo's characters and Capcom's characters. Like, that's another dream game. These are some of my, probably not going to happen, but would be pretty darn cool if it did. All right, we almost made it to an hour. This was fun. Take a tenth of the excitement that I had today, take a tenth of the games I just blurted out today, and have them be there tomorrow at 3 p.m. Pacific time, which I will be live streaming, and it's going to be a fantastic show, right? Okay, this is Paul Gale from paulgalenetwork.com signing out. Thank you for watching with me. If you made it to the end, I appreciate it. And props to you for lasting an hour. That was a good run. All right, take it easy. See you all tomorrow. Bye.